Boylike, Harvey imitated all the men by turns, till he had combined Disko's peculiar stoop at the wheel, Long Jack's swinging overhand when the lines were hauled, Manuel's round-shouldered but effective stroke in a dory, and Tom Platt's generous Ohio stride along the deck. "'Tis beautiful to see how he takes to it," said Long Jack, when Harvey was looking out by the windlass one thick noon. "I'll lay my wage an' share 'tis more'n half play actin' to him, an' he consates himself he's a bold mariner. Watch his little bit of a back now." "That's the way we all begin," said Tom Platt. "The boys, they make believe all the time, till they've cheated themselves into being men, an' so till they die, pretendin' an' pretendin'. I done it on the old Ohio, I know. Stood my first watch harbor watch feelin' finer'n Farragut. Dan's full o' the same kind o' notions. See 'em now, actin' to be genuine mossbacks, every hair a rope yarn an' blood Stockholm tar." He spoke down the cabin stairs. "Guess you're mistook in your jedgments fer once, Disko. What in Rome made you tell us all here the kid was crazy?"
"He was," Disko replied. "Crazy as a loon when he come aboard, but I'll say he's sobered up considerable sense. I cured him." "He yarns good," said Tom Platt. "T'other night he told us abaout a kid of his own size, steerin' a cunnin' little rig an' 4 ponies up an' down Toledo, Ohio, I think 'twas, an' givin' suppers to a crowd o' sim'lar kids. Curious kind o' fairy tale, but blame interesting. He knows scores of 'em." "Guess he strikes 'em out of his own head,"
Disko called from the cabin, where he was busy with the logbook.
"Stands to reason that sort is all made up. It don't take in no one but Dan, an' he laughs at it. I've heard him, behind my back."
"You ever hear what Simon Peter Calhoun said when they whacked up a match 'twixt his sister Hitty an' Lorin' Gerald, an' the boys put up that joke on him down to George's?" drawled Uncle Salters, who was dripping peaceably under the lee of the starboard dory nest. Tom Platt puffed at his pipe in scornful silence. He was a Cape Cod man, and had not known that tale more than 20 years. Uncle Salters went on with a rasping chuckle. "Simon Peter Calhoun, he said, an' he was jest right, abaout Lorin'. Ha'af on the taown, he said, an' t'other ha'af blame fool, an' they told me she's married a rich man. Simon Peter Calhoun he needn't no roof to his mouth an' talk that way." "He didn't talk any Pennsylvania Dutch," Tom Platt replied. "You'd better leave a Cape man to tell that tale. The Calhouns were gypsies from way back." "Wal, I don't profess to be any elocutionist," Salters said. "I'm comin' to the moral o' things. That's jest abaout what our Harve be. Ha'af on the taown, an' t'other ha'af blame fool, an' there's some'll believe he's a rich man. Yah!" "Did you ever think how sweet 'twould be to sail wid a full crew o' Salterses?" said Long Jack. "Ha'af in the fur an' t'other ha'af in the muck heap, as Calhoun did not say, an' makes out he's a fisherman." A little laugh went around at Salters's expense. Disko held his tongue and wrought over the logbook that he kept in a hatchet-faced, square hand. This was the kind of thing that ran on, page after soiled page.
"July 17. This day thick fog and few fish. Made berth to northward. So ends this day. July 18. This day comes in with thick fog. Caught a few fish. July 19. This day comes in with light breeze from northeast and fine weather. Made a berth to eastward. Caught plenty fish. July 20. This, the Sabbath, comes in with fog and light winds. So ends this day. Total fish caught this week, 3,478. They never worked on Sundays, but shaved and washed themselves if it were fine, and Pennsylvania sang hymns. Once or twice he suggested that, if it was not an impertinence, he thought he could preach a little. Uncle Salters nearly jumped down his throat at the mere notion, reminding him that he was not a preacher and mustn't think of such things.
We'd have him rememberin' Johnstown next," Salters explained. "An' what would happen then?" So they compromised on his reading aloud from a book called Josephus. It was an old leather-bound volume, smelling of 100 voyages, very solid and very like the Bible, but enlivened with accounts of battles and sieges, and they read it nearly from cover to cover. Otherwise Penn was a silent little body. He would not utter a word for 3 days on end sometimes, though he played checkers, listened to the songs, and laughed at the stories. When they tried to stir him up, he would answer, "I don't wish to seem unneighbourly, but it is because I have nothing to say. My head feels quite empty. I've almost forgotten my name." He would turn to Uncle Salters with an expectant smile. "Why, Pennsylvania Pratt," Salters would shout. "You'll forget me next." "No, never," Penn would say, shutting his lips firmly. "Pennsylvania Pratt, of course," he would repeat over and over. Sometimes it was Uncle Salters who forgot, and told him he was Haskins or Rich or McVitie, but Penn was equally content till next time. He was always very tender with Harvey, whom he pitied both as a lost child and as a lunatic, and when Salters saw that Penn liked the boy, he relaxed too. Salters was not an amiable person. He esteemed it his business to keep the boys in order, and the first time Harvey, in fear and trembling, on a still day, managed to shin up to the main truck, Dan was behind him ready to help. He esteemed it his duty to hang Salters's big sea boots up there, a sign of shame and derision to the nearest schooner. With Disko, Harvey took no liberties, not even when the old man dropped direct orders and treated him like the rest of the crew to "Don't you want to do so and so?" and "Guess you'd better," and so forth. There was something about the clean-shaven lips and the puckered corners of the eyes that was mightily sobering to young blood. Disko showed him the meaning of the thumbed and pricked chart, which, he said, laid over any government publication whatsoever, led him, pencil in hand, from berth to berth over the whole string of banks Le Havre, Western, Banquereau, St. Pierre, Green, and Grand, talking cod meantime. Taught him, too, the principle on which the hog yoke was worked. In this Harvey excelled Dan, for he had inherited a head for figures, and the notion of stealing information from one glimpse of the sullen Bank sun appealed to all his keen wits. For other sea matters his age handicapped him. As Disko said, he should have begun when he was 10. Dan could bait up trawl or lay his hand on any rope in the dark, and at a pinch, when Uncle Salters had a gurry sore on his palm, could dress down by sense of touch. He could steer in anything short of half a gale from the feel of the wind on his face, humoring the We're Here just when she needed it. These things he did as automatically as he skipped about the rigging, or made his dory a part of his own will and body. But he could not communicate his knowledge to Harvey. Still, there was a good deal of general information flying about the schooner on stormy days, when they lay up in the foc'sle or sat on the cabin lockers, while spare eye-bolts, leads, and rings rolled and rattled in the pauses of the talk. Disko spoke of whaling voyages in the '50s, of great she-whales slain beside their young, of death agonies on the black tossing seas, and blood that spurted 40 feet in the air, of boats smashed to splinters, of patent rockets that went off wrong end first and bombarded the trembling crews, of cutting in and boiling down, and that terrible nip of '71, when 1,200 men were made homeless on the ice in 3 days. Wonderful tales, all true. But more wonderful still were his stories of the cod, and how they argued and reasoned on their private businesses deep down below the keel. Long Jack's taste ran more to the supernatural. He held them silent with ghastly stories of the yo-hos on the Monomoy beach, that mock and terrify lonely clam diggers, of sand walkers and dune haunters who were never properly buried, of hidden treasure on Fire Island guarded by the spirits of Kidd's men, of ships that sailed in the fog straight over Truro township, of that harbor in Maine where